I trust the people that have brought it forward more than I fear the word. And I believe we need to do whatever we can in all communities, but specifically in ours, to address racism now. There's certainly risks. The process could go off the rails and could go in a direction that I wouldn't want it in, and yet I recognize it's time to do something. I'll close with a quote that I love from the 20th century African-American novelist James Baldwin, who said, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing is changed until it is faced." And so I'm asking council to give the commission a chance and to see what they come up with. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during the public comment period? If there is, you can come forward now.
Got it. In the back.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Robert Winslow. I'm a Greensboro resident, 5906 Cardinal Lake Drive, Greensboro, North Carolina. I'm going to piggyback on what Matt just talked about regarding the Reparations Commission. To give you a bit of perspective on where I'm coming from, I think it's important to understand my father was born in High Point. My mother was born in Greensboro. I grew up in a house built by my great-grandfather in Jamestown. We had a High Point telephone, Greensboro address, lived closest to the Jamestown border. So I look at this community as one community. I think of Greensboro and High Point and Jamestown as different neighborhoods in the same place. I grew up on land that was acquired by my great-great-grandfather in 1745 by land grant. I say all that not because it makes me special, but it just gives you a sense of my rootedness and my care and my connection to this community. I grew up next to a family that were tenant farmers. I thought it was odd that it was very important in my family to call everybody Mr. and Mrs., say yes ma'am, no ma'am, and whatnot. And yet the people that lived adjacent to us, 3 generations of people my age, my parents' age, and my grandparents' age, I called them by their first names. I called them by their nicknames. I don't know how old I was when I even learned what their last names were. I called the domestics of family friends by their first names. Didn't know what their last names were. Nice people, kind people, loving people. I asked my mother, why can I call them by their first names? That's just the way it is, she said. I'd used up my why on that question, so I didn't delve any further. The children my age living next door to me, another why are they not in school with me? Well, they go to different schools. Well, why? That's just the way it is. We have created these systems of inequity and disrespect that we need to rectify. Reparations is a word that means repair. To Matt's point, we need healing. The only way we can have healing, the only way we can create the single most livable, safe, and prosperous community in America for everybody is to fix this stuff and to do things necessary to overcome the negatives that the stuff we created as white people has caused to divide our towns, our cities, and our nation. We can either just talk about it or we can do things. And the starting of this process is to establish a commission to understand what reparations can and ought to look like, to understand that reparations is not pointing the finger, but it's taking ownership and solving a problem. To understand that reparations is a way to try to help level a playing field that has been unlevel and kept unlevel for centuries. So, I urge the council to vote in favor of this commission, and I urge the council to monitor the commission, make sure there's strong and competent people a part of the commission, that it's a collaborative effort, that it's sustainable, and that's transformative. It's not a handout. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Winslow. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak during public comment period? Yes, Reverend Thomas.
Good evening. I'm Frank Thomas. I pastor Mount Zion Baptist Church here in the city, 753 Washington Street. I'm excited today. I've often shared with people that oppression of any type will never end as long as the oppressed are the only people talking about it. I'm excited because two white guys spoke before me. Sometimes the only way things will change is when people who are in the position of change are addressed by people that look like them. My brother who just spoke talked about reparation. The definition is the making of amends for wrong or injury done. When you hear the word reparations, people always default to money. They think we're just going to write a check to African Americans all over the place. But to make amends does not necessarily mean writing a check. And issuing this commission only means that you want to study the possibility of wrong that has happened to people in our past and see what this council might do about it to make it right.
Thank you, Reverend Thomas. Anyone else who'd like to speak? Okay. Seeing none, then I'm going to close the public comment period. And we're going to go backwards on the agenda to our strategic plan update. And for that, we're going to be talking about blight reduction and our marketing and branding initiative. And I'll go first to Councilmember Chris Williams, who will give us an update on our strategic plan regarding blight reduction.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report summarizes code enforcement activity for the month of August. During this period, code enforcement staff processed 17 new minimum housing cases and 133 new public nuisance cases and collected 103 signs. In addition, the LEC staff recorded 23 zoning complaints. A total of 172 public nuisance cases were abated, 52 by the city and 120 by the owners. 2 inspectors did work on Saturday morning, 8/14, and collected 68 signs. 4 properties with ordinance passed are in the appeal period. Demolition bids will be requested when the appeal period has expired. 2 properties have been bid out for demolitions, 2 properties waiting for asbestos abatement to be completed, 1 property out for asbestos abatement quote, 1 property waiting on asbestos inspection report. There are 2 housing cases with an ordinance passed for demolition waiting for repairs to be completed. One is at 337 Wingo and the other is 216 Underhill. 2 inspector positions remain open and interviews are underway. During the report period, there were 532 total active cases, 223 active minimum housing cases, 177 active public nuisance cases, and 133 active zoning cases. I will turn the floor over to Lori Luzman.
Good evening again, or not again, it'll be again later. Mayor and City Council. The property we have, we're still continuing the nice repairs of houses. We inspected this property at 628 South Elm Street back in February of 2019. And this, we did not have any interior pictures of the house when we inspected. This was an aerial view of what it looked like at the time. And so we made an inspection. It needed to be repaired. So repairs were completed, and the property was sold in August, just the other month. And I contacted the owner. I talked to her to find out if she was living in it or if she was renting, because I noticed they lived in Raleigh. And she said that she has an aunt who's living in the house. She bought it for her aunt who's a senior. So she's living in it, and this is what the house looks like now. And when I showed the previous picture, I blocked out, there was a house to the right of this that we had started, and actually, I can't remember now if the owner demolished it or the city demolished it, but hopefully it's going to continue down Elm Street where it continues to be repaired and things cleaned up and eliminating blight as we've been asked to do by council.
Is that it? Okay, thank you. Mayor, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councilman Williams. We now go to Councilman Michael Holmes for an update on our marketing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to say thank you all for coming out tonight. As we have undertaken this endeavor to look at our brand, look at how we tell the story of High Point, I look across this room and I think we have a pretty good story to tell. A city who recognizes what we have been, but is also focused on who we can be and should be. So a great effort was undertaken by staff to put together an RFP. It was reviewed by the task force, then back to P&L, all with favorable recommendations. And this Friday, September 24th, we will release it to the public for bids. So over the next few weeks, we'll receive bids, and as they come back, we will review those and assign a budget number to those, and then essentially select a vendor who will then focus on our branding. We will take a look at our current brand, and it will, once amended or changed, is whatever the process ends up looking like, that will then cross our city. Everything that you see with the High Point symbol and logo on it will have this new, refreshed, revitalized brand. So part of that process will be talking to communities all across the city to finally capture the voice of those, of every community in this city. So we recognize what we have been, but we know we can be greater. So look forward to this process.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Now, Councilman Jones has requested that we move one of the appointments up on the agenda. I think that's just from a scheduling standpoint. Councilman Holmes, I'm going to turn, or you're Holmes, you're Jones. Councilman Jones, I'm going to turn this over to you now to announce your reappointment. We'll go ahead and handle that now.
Okay. Yeah, I had an appointment on the Citizen Advisory Council that needed to step down due to personal schedules, and couldn't find a better replacement. He's also another Marine, so, you know, can't go wrong there. But my friend Tim Manager has agreed and submitted his application to serve on that board in that capacity, and with council's approval, would be honored to have him serve in that capacity.
Okay. So this is a motion on item 2021-418, the appointment of Tim Andrew to the Citizens Advisory Council. Is there a second? Second. There is a second by the Mayor Pro Tem. Is there any discussion on this item? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of approval, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion is approved. Just to be nice, is there anyone else who is here in present to be appointed to a?
Is Jason Hicks here?
Okay,
Hey, Jason.
okay.
And,
'Cause I think it would be good for us to go ahead and get these appointments over with and get these folks on their way.
Could we do a quick photo for Tim?
Yes, we can.
You and Tim?
Let's go ahead and do this one, and then we'll get them both out of the way, save a little time. Councilman Moore, I believe this is your appointment, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Jason Hicks submitted his application and to be part of our Citizens Advisory Council. I had not met Jason before, but I was very impressed with his resume, and I enjoyed our discussion via the telephone a few times, and I am impressed with him and his commitment and his willingness to serve, and I'm looking forward to his working with our CAC and the work he'll do there, and I will make that as a motion for appointment.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for the appointment of Jason Hicks to the Citizens Advisory Council. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the appointment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason. Are there anyone else here who's supposed to be appointed to something?
I have another appointee, but she will not be here for a few more minutes. So.
Let's just go ahead and do these two other ones so I don't get confused. The item 2021-417 is the reappointment of Robert Sims to the CAC. I believe this is Councilwoman Peters' appointee, and so Councilwoman Peters, I'll turn this over to you.
Okay, is Robert Sims here? I don't,
Nope. Yes, here.
okay, okay, so yeah, I'd like to make a motion to reappoint Robert Sims to the Citizen Advisory Council. And I want to say also thank you, because I was not aware that your term had expired, and I'm so grateful that you want to continue serving, and I would like to make the motion to reappoint Mr. Sims.
There's a motion and a second by Councilman Johnson. Any discussion on this item? Okay. Hearing none, all those who approve, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes. There's also an appointment of Councilman Jones of Maritza Gomez to the Human Relations Commission. Councilman Jones?
Actually, she just entered the room.
There you go.
So, yeah, I've got an appointment to the Human Relations Commission. I had to step down as well. She was actually my first call. She's very involved in the community, has a big heart for people, so she's graciously agreed to serve as my appointment.
Okay. Is there a second for this motion?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Johnson. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in approval of this appointment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, hearing none, that motion is approved. Those of you who are here and who are being appointed, if you'd like to come forward, we'll get some photos. The council folks who appointed them, if y'all would like to step down and get pictures with them, that'd be fine. We'll just pause for a moment for that. No, let's wait. I'm just doing it so these folks can leave.
The other way.
Oops.
He's got other motives.
Okay. Thank you to each of you for being willing to serve the city. We really do appreciate it. It's often hard to get folks who are willing to serve on committees, so I really do appreciate you doing that. The next on the agenda, we're going to go back up to the Finance Committee portion of the agenda, and for that, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Mayor Pro Tem Britt Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Wagner. We did have our meeting regularly scheduled on Thursday. I want to take just a second to thank Councilman Jones for chairing that meeting and Mayor Wagner for filling in with Councilwoman Peters and Councilman Holmes in my absence. And although I was absent, for those of you that may not know, I was listening in via the cloud, so I was there. But before you tonight, you have items 2021-393 consecutive into 2021-405. There was an additional item that came in late as 2021-422 at the request of Councilman Williams, which we were glad to entertain. And so I am presenting this consent agenda to council with a favorable recommendation for approval.
Second.
Okay. There's a motion, which has been seconded, I believe, by Councilman Holmes, for approval of these consent agenda items. Is there any discussion among any of these items? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approval of the finance consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Thank you.
That's all for finance. Thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda are the Prosperity and Livability Committee items, and for that, I'll turn the meeting over to Councilmember Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Prosperity and Livability Committee met on August 4th, and we had a presentation from the local chapter of the NAACP, and it is my honor and pleasure to introduce Mr. Jim Adams to the podium to give us a presentation.
Mr. Mayor, city officials, and all of you here with us this evening, good evening. I'm James Adams, President of High Point Branch at NAACP. I thank you for being here with us this evening. It's been 2 years plus that our branch has been working on the subject of Reparations Commission. It is Ms. Doris Patrick who brought this committee together and helped us get this conversation started. 2+ years, and here we stand. If not the most exciting and historical opportunities for our community. With that, I would like to, why my phone go off right when I'm standing here? 2+ years we stand here at one of, if not the most exciting historical opportunities in our community. With that, I'd like to have our chair of the High Point NAACP Reparations Commission Committee, Attorney James Mays. Assisting Mr. Mays this evening with questions you might have are Reverend Dr. Brad Lilly, Benita Sims, and Ms. Elma Harrison. Thank you all for being here this evening.
Mayor, City Council, the distinguished guests with us here tonight, I will be brief. I just want to emphasize 4 points. We are asking for a commission. We're not asking for a check to be mailed next week. We're not asking, I saw some nice houses on the west side. We're not asking for those. We're asking for a commission. Excuse me. It's become automatic, to try to speak through these things. We're asking for a commission to continue the discussion. Right. Second point, based upon contemporary events, we see that an opportunity has emerged. The convergence of these events has allowed us to focus in on what seem to be intractable problems, or challenges, I should say. But it is the distinct and unique feature of our society, of our form of government, that we can periodically have these moments where we move forward, where we can repair, where we can remedy, where we can heal, where we can become, as one of our members said, that one High Point, that one community. We have the opportunity. I ask you tonight to consider this commission as an opportunity to begin a very important discussion. If you have any questions, as the president said, we have 3 of our members here who are ready to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Mays? If not, the P&L committee voted to make the recommendation to create a commission that the NAACP has recommended and to endorse the resolution that you all have a copy of, minus the last section of that resolution that lists $100,000 monetary. That is not in the resolution. So I will make that recommendation as a motion.
Okay. There's a motion to approve the resolution that was submitted in our packet, with the exception of the the section 8 being removed. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this item?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, I'm looking for something, Michael.
Councilman Holmes?
Recently, in P&L, Dr. Patrick Harmon came forward and he introduced some information to us that, frankly, I have been grappling with since I heard it. And forgive me. A study done by High Point University said that someone in our city who lives in the 27260 zip code versus someone who lives in 27265 would experience 17 and a half years less life expectancy. In our city, 10 to 12 miles apart, our citizens are being robbed of nearly 2 decades of life because of systems that exist. I don't see how anyone who said that they care for their fellow man could abide that. I can't. I'm not one to get emotional, but that brought me pain. And I've felt that pain since I heard that information. So if there's anything that we can do that can alleviate that kind of struggle and suffering to improve the quality of lives for our fellow man, we should take every conceivable effort to do so. Thank you.
Councilman Moore, I believe you had something you'd like to say.
Wesley, what is the recommendation of the makeup of this board is what?
It's said in the resolution, it has that.
It's in section 4. You're looking at the PowerPoint. It's in the actual resolution.
In the resolution itself.
It's 2 members by the mayor, 3 members by council, and 8 members from outside of council.
Does anyone here representing some of the answers from the NAACP see any conflict potentials from elected officials that come and go being part of the council, and what is the advantage or disadvantage to that not being part of the council, being part of the commission?
Can you restate that, Councilman?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Sims. Having 5 members, you're looking for a total of 13, is that correct?
It would be 5 appointed by council, not
members. But it
Not
wouldn't be
members of
members?
council.
Right.
Okay,
That's right.
okay.
Yeah. 2 appointed by the mayor, 2 appointed by the council, 3 appointed by the council, and 8 from outside.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Glad to help you.
Yeah, well, from one mayor to the next.
There you go. Are there any other comments or clarifications on this, folks? Anyone else like to speak?
And forgive me if I didn't, I was looking to see, this commission, is it has a sun, I know it has a sunrise, does it have a sunset on this, or this is a continued commission, through maybe this body too?
The way the resolution is written, it does not have a sunset in it. However, it does not preclude this council from setting a sunset and saying if the life of the commission is 12 months, it's whatever you establish it to be, or until the work is done. So, again, it cannot carry over to another council, I would think, to actually address or work with what comes out of the commission. You can't make that, we can't make that be a requirement. But at the same time, as we move forward with this, you do have the ability to say, this commission will be established for 12 months. However, the work plan is decided upon by the commission.
Okay.
It says that the commission will submit to city council within 1 year its report, and that the commission then terminates no later than 90 days after the submission of the report. So it would be a year plus 90 days.
Forgive me, because I did not see that.
Anyone else with any comments?
I've got some comments.
Yes.
All right, so first of all, I would absolutely be ready tonight to vote in favor of a commission. But I do want to say a couple of things. We already have to change on the resolution the $100,000 at the bottom. I think that there's a few more items that need to be tightened up. I've made it very clear with several folks about some of the things, maybe using one high point instead of reparations, because I know that a lot of people have called me and they do associate reparations with money. And so I just want it to build a bridge and not tear apart. But there's also in this resolution, it talks about distribution of wealth. And I think that if we use a lot of that national verbiage that's tearing our country apart, it's going to tear our community apart. I want a commission, and then maybe we look at how we appoint the people. What skill sets do we want them to have? Are they going to be business owners? Are they going to be, so I think that we need to tighten up the resolution a little bit. I hope that's not offending anyone, but other than that, I'm ready to approve a commission. So.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I act like the ever-ready bunny, but when the questions are asked, I feel compelled to respond to that. Number one, this resolution is a resolution that was adopted by the local branch of the High Point NAACP. That's number one. So it is the resolution in its entirety, except for the portion that you all said you needed to pull out regarding the dollars and the funding, is the resolution. Now, if in the course of appointing that commission, the commission and those involved decide that we feel it needs to be addressed in a different way, that should be the work of the commission. So if you all are going to cherry pick what portions of it you want to support, that's not fair to the work of the commission. It has already been established that there will be work done, research done, a lot of things done in the course of doing this work. And so I think that at this point, it's incumbent upon this body to say, yes, we will support the commission and the formation of it, with the exception of the dollars. And then let the commission do its work and report back to you what their thoughts are, what their recommendations are, and how they think we should move forward. But if you start moving all this stuff around, it no longer has the same meaning and the same, workflow or work that we're telling you needs to happen in our community. I understand that reparations are scary, but we deal with scary stuff every day. And so at the end of the day, what we need to do is look at this on its face, and we've already gotten several definitions of what reparations means. And so it doesn't necessarily, we know this body does not have the wherewithal to give money to any citizen in High Point out of the budget that you all manage. We understand this. But what we're asking is, let's have a conversation about how we make better communities, how we make better people who live in our communities. And the redistribution of the wealth is not about changing money around. It's about you all looking at your budgets and your work plans and saying, how can we uplift these communities that are in trauma? And we have communities in our city that are traumatized. We have to work through that process, and that's the purpose of this commission. So I would ask you all, really ask you, not to start looking at pulling this resolution apart, but let's look at voting for it on its face, and then let's move forward with getting the work done. And we hope that at the end of all this, everybody in here is going to rise up as a result of it. And this council can do something really cutting edge, really exciting, and they can come out of this saying, look what we did, creating the single most livable, safe, and prosperous community in America. That's what we want.
Mayor, can I follow up with
yes.
a question? If I'm going to follow up with another question. Thank you so much, Ms. Sims, for saying that. This question is for the NAACP and our staff too, because one thing that I can see that as a huge value, we've got lots of grants available through federal monies, and most of those grants ask for a component of equity and disparities. Does the commission, as the NAACP see where they can help the city position ourselves so that we can receive some of those? And does staff see that as a help for us to position ourselves so that we can get more of that federal funding? Is that a fair question?
Mr. Mayor and council members and those in this chamber, my name is Brad Lilly. I pastor Shekinah Glory Church International, and I am a member of the High Point NAACP. When we talk about the establishment of a commission, we already know that its purpose is brought forth because it's going to take more study. But the motivation and the justification for some kind of direct action is clear. That's why we ask for the creation of a city commission to explore community reparations for African American citizens of High Point. Does High Point owe a moral debt to our African American citizens? 250 years of slavery, 99 years of Jim Crow, 60 years of separate but equal, 35 years of racist housing policy. Until we can reckon with our compounding moral debts, this city will never be whole. And that's what we are seeking. Injustices are still built into the structure of our society today, denying opportunity, financial prejudice, policing and imprisoning, vastly disproportionate, and refusing to rectify wrongs has went on for a long time. If we want the city that our slogan boasts of, the first word in your slogan is creating. We want to create a commission that we can look at past wrongs, and we all know they exist, and figure out ways to rectify it, make things right. Some of the questions you may have are questions actually that the commission will work on and come back with something that is morally right for all of us. And when you talk about the redistribution of wealth, we're not talking about we're going to go into your accounts, take from you what you have. We're talking about a level playing field. We're talking about admitting, yes, things were done wrong in the past. You weren't a slave master, and I was not a slave. But if you go back far enough, you'll find some kind of connection, and you'll find where the African American was held down while people of another color had privileges that we were denied. And so I know we didn't choose to be born in a prejudiced society. And it's infected all of us subconsciously. It affects all of us. And we see it every day. We face it every day. And what we want to do is be able to look at you at the end of this journey, say thank you. You've helped. You've recognized the need. You faced this challenge, and you voted yes. We don't know what's on the other side of this journey, but it has to start. The first word of the city slogan is creating. And that's what we came and asked of you. Create a commission. Vote yes. I thank you.
Ms. Peters, do you need someone from staff to address what your question was to?
I'm not even sure if they could answer it, but if they could, was that a?
Could you restate it just?
Yeah, I was just wondering if, with all the different grant opportunities that we have coming in from federally, can you see where this commission could help us position ourselves to qualify for some of those
I think that,
opportunities?
sure. Councilmember Peters, this is Tasha Logan Ford, City Manager for the City of High Point. I think that whenever we're thinking about disparities in our community, there are grant opportunities that come that typically are targeted towards you addressing specific issues. Anytime that you have research that points to those disparities or you can identify groups that have been harmed, I think it can help you better design programs to meet those needs. I don't know what those grant opportunities are. They're typically changing. A lot of them come through housing and urban development or other entities. They may even be energy related, thinking about infrastructure around water and sewer. They're just very broad. But I think that anytime that you have more information that tells you what the needs are, you can always use that information in preparing and helping to tell the story in your community to try to identify funding. So if you're asking me for a specific program that I can list tonight to answer that question, I can't do that. But always having the information that tells you where the needs are in your community can help you position and prepare for grant applications as they come down.
Perfect.
I got another question, and I'm probably, if it's okay. Oh, I'm sorry, this is Councilman Chris Williams, Ward 2. Either Mayor Sims or Lily, I'm not sure which one. Just got a quick question, and I'll tell you that, of course, I support it. I support it because I think that it's going to do more than just show some opportunities we can to go fix, but it also shows some of the work that's already been done. With the diversity, equity, inclusion department created here, the operation of this much projects that was going out, there's no cost to people getting their homes fixed. I mean, there's a lot of things that's been done. I think that this actually may even put a spotlight on those to show people where they can actually go and receive some of the services and the opportunities that we already presented here. My thing has always been a kind of understanding of housekeeping, so I ain't trying to change anything. I just want to get an understanding. The 8 outside members that will be in hope I'm reading this. Let's see. It says 8 members shall be selected from the African American civil rights and civic organizations that have historically championed the cause of the city of High Point for justice for the city of High Point. those people will be selected by whom? Like, is it going to be from the initial 5 that's created from the commission, or, that's just a question. And I hope that's fair.
Well, for those 8, just as the proposal, the request says, to be selected from organizations, communities, private individuals, who we feel can best represent the African-American community. NAACP, Ministers Conference, and other groups like that. Each group would actually, once identified, would actually meet and select their own representative to sit on the commission.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this topic?
Yeah, I would like to make a comment. Tyrone Johnson, that, number one, I do support it 100%. The formation, the creating of this commission, and you are correct. You have to start somewhere, okay? Anytime you create or you're forming something, we're looking for results, okay? And I think forming this, matter of fact, I know forming this commission, we will get some results. And in order to do that, you got to start it. So I think it was, I read it thoroughly. I think elegant job in this resolution. Thank you.
Anyone else like to be heard on this?
I would like to, this is Councilman Moore. I just want to, Mr. Robert Winslow shared his story briefly. So, and I appreciate that and appreciate what he said. So I'll share mine real quick. I was born in this town in 1963. So I probably didn't know I was alive till 69, 71. I was just being a kid. Right on the heels of the Civil Rights Movement. Certainly was taught my history from family and public school teachers at Northeast and Andrews and on into college. But I have been the great beneficiary, I guess you would say, of growing up in a time when I did, because I know of all of the things of which Mr. Lilly spoke, but I didn't have to live them. And very fortunate that that happened. But I also benefited from the folks like former Councilwoman Mary Lou Blakeney and all of those who stepped out when things were wrong, in an effort to wondering if they would ever see them get right or better. And I did see them get better. Andrews High School was the first school in the state of North Carolina to be created for the distinct purpose of bringing the black community and the white community together. Prior to that, you had Penn Griffin and you had High Point High School. I had parents who taught me not to see anybody as color, but for what they are. So I have seen and realized everything that is said, whether it be from banking, whether it be to discrimination, whether it be those things, but I've seen the flip side too. And at 58 years old, I have many friends that chose to marry interracially, many of color that started their own businesses that have become very successful, and have raised wonderful, law-abiding, great children that are assets to our community. My concern is, from my story, all the progress that we have seen, that we do not get sidetracked into a history, however unfair it may have been. But I know through my history that lots of whites fought and died to help move us away from slavery too. And lots of whites hooked arms and marched with Martin Luther King and many others through Alabama and other places as well. So our history is marked with unfortunate circumstances because our history is made up of people like me that are fallible human beings. So I have mixed emotions on this, because while I don't want any wrongdoing going unpunished, I have seen great progress in my life, and I see it in my 28 and 26-year-old children as they're living out their lives in a corporate world and in a city and in a country that is becoming more and more and more diverse, with all kinds of issues and color just being one of them. So the intentions, I believe, are well-founded. With due respect to someone I admire quite a bit, our first female mayor of color in High Point, and she's always been very persuasive and smart. I do have concerns that if it's not tightened up a little bit, that it leaves a lot of room for things to get off the track. And I wouldn't want that to happen. This council, I'm going to tell you, I've been fortunate to serve this city that I love several times, and it's meant a lot. And it's one of the most, I've had the opportunity to travel quite a bit. It's one of the most caring communities anywhere. You can see it in the new $4.185 million that we're trying to raise. You can see it in many of the policies that this council has passed. So if we're going to go down this road, whether it's because Asheville did it or somebody else did it or whatever, then I want us to be very careful. Because once I'm gone from this dais, I wouldn't want it to be something that takes us backwards instead of forwards. Thanks.
Anyone else like to speak?
Just a point of clarification, I guess, in some ways. I was kind of not sure about what the purpose of this was, and so, I called Councilman Holmes, and I've spoken to Councilman Jefferson about it. It seems to me that, it was very informative. Like, I'm a smarter person after having that conversation. All the facts that Councilmember Holmes was able to enlighten me on, the things that were mind-blowing. I just wouldn't even believed him had he not told me. But it really seems like what this commission is doing is getting us, us as in the council, getting us data, facts, figures from studies that have been done, like the High Point one you mentioned or whatever. So I liked Monica's idea about possibly a different name that it called it what it would be, which in my opinion would be more like a racial economic impact commission, something that studies it can give us, the council, because we need to know this information, how, whether it's, you know, African-American community, whether it's Hispanic, whoever, if anyone, any minority group in the High Point is at a disadvantage, and if there's anything we can do to cure it, that would be my only suggestion. I've spoken to a couple of members of council, I won't name everybody, but that seem to be okay with that. If the city's going to create the commission, we're going to title the commission, I think the title of the commission would be more in tune with what the actual goal of the commission would be if it were under the umbrella of Racial Economic Impact Commission.
So I have a question for Councilman Hudson. So just to be clear, that your motion is to approve this resolution as written minus Section 8, correct?
That is the
Regarding
motion from
100,000.
the P&L committee.
From the P&L committee.
Yes.
So this, in effect, creates the commission. It's not then up to us to, as Councilman Jones said, to then turn around and create a commission and give them directives on what to do. It's all included in here.
It is included in the resolution, yes.
Okay. All right. I'll just give you my feelings on it. I think this council, since we got elected in 2019, and I've been on council since 2012, but I've lived in High Point my whole life, and I tried to keep track of local politics and what was going on, and I remember coming to council meetings when I was a kid, and seeing Bob Wells and Roy Culler and those folks back in the 70s. Honestly, I think this council has done more for the cause of equal opportunity and a commitment to justice than any council I've ever seen. And I think there's a lot of folks in the city who maybe don't know what this council has done. So I'd like to point out some of those things. On May the 4th of 2020, and I give you that date because that was during a period prior to our current great national discussion on race began. May the 4th was before Memorial Day weekend in May 2020. And I think we all know what happened Memorial Day weekend in May 2020. So before that happened, this council committed to revising our personnel resolution to make our hiring process more transparent and fair for everybody. We initiated staff leadership training and development to allow folks who are within the city staff to receive the training that they need to move up and to be able to pursue their careers better, have better training for that. We approved mandatory diversity training. We approved more outreach to minority job candidates and to minority-owned businesses and contracting for the city. We approved a diversity, equity, inclusion specialist position, which is the first one our city's ever had. We have, throughout the course of the time we've been on council, we have given lots of support to eliminating food deserts in High Point, which is something that disproportionately affects the minority community. We have, one of our strategic plan prongs is our blight reduction strategy. And this, as Councilman Williams spoke earlier, this council and our past council in the last 5 years has done more to reduce blight in the city of High Point than any council in decades. And that is, again, that is an issue that disproportionately affects the minority community in High Point. Not only that, this council during our strategic planning session last year went a step further and said we're going to try to focus and concentrate our efforts in a more holistic way in a certain neighborhood, and we're working to establish which neighborhood that's going to be and try to really look holistically, not just at housing, but what does that neighborhood look like in terms of city services? What do the curbs look like? What do the sidewalks look like? What does the road look like? Are we making that area safe for investment? We have supported and invested millions of dollars in new affordable housing for High Point, including the bonds for the redevelopment of Daniel Brooks, which is underway right now. We've also increased police support to provide and promote anti-violence and safer neighborhoods. That is a thing that disproportionately affects minority citizens as well. And if you want investment in poor neighborhoods, the number one thing you got to do is you got to make them safe, because people will not invest money in neighborhoods that are not safe. We also have a long history of support for High Point Community Against Violence to redirect and retrain offenders. That's been a big success story. It's noted all over the country. So this is a council that I think understands the situation and understands the why. And I want everybody here to understand that I understand the why. I understand the history. I'm a student of history. I do a lot of reading on my own about the injustices of slavery and Jim Crow, and these are things I do on my own because I'm interested in that history. So I get the why, and I understand that there are disparities. The issue that I have with the current proposal is more about the how. I respect your reasoning. I understand why you want the commission. I get it. Unfortunately, one of the byproducts of going to law school and becoming a lawyer, and our city attorney, Ms. Carlisle, will probably echo this, is they tell you when you go to law school, you'll never think like you did before. You'll think like a lawyer from then on. And so unfortunately, I'm cursed with that, so I think like a lawyer. And the city is, and I believe that the city attorney made a presentation to the P&L committee about this, about how legally restricted we are as a city in terms of what we can do that might be considered reparations or might be considered as some sort of monetary system of repairing our communities in this, based on this issue. We're extremely legally restricted in what we can do. And that's the main thing that concerns me about this proposal. I don't want to create a commission that is not going to understand perhaps the parameters that the city has to operate within. Because I don't want you to spend a year studying and coming back and bringing us things only for us to say, well, we're already doing that, because we're already doing a lot more than councils in the past have done. We're doing, or we're not legally able to do that. And so my fear is that without creating some parameters ahead of time for what this commission is and what it's to do and kind of what is expected in the back end, that we may end up with that council or with that commission having a lack of, I wouldn't call it a lack of focus, but coming back and bringing us things that end up that we can't do. There's a lot of things in the wording here that philosophically I don't agree with. And I won't get into that because I don't want to keep you here forever. But this seems to me to be the sort of thing where you have to pass it to find out what's in it. And I don't like that. I'm the type of person that I like to see exactly what I'm agreeing to. And even with this wording here, it seems like there's a whole lot of stuff that's just out there undecided. And so for me, it's going to be really hard for me to support this. I understand the why. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I understand the why, and I understand why you want to do this. I really do. My problem is really with the how. There's one philosophical thing that I have too, and maybe Councilman Moore alluded to it, I don't know. But I really have serious questions over whether the problems that we have in America surrounding race and dealing with race and the injustices and the just outright reprehensible behavior in the past can ever be fixed by government. I just don't know that they can. I think ultimately, any government, not the city government, the state government, the federal government, I don't know that it can be fixed by government. I think that ultimately what's going to fix the problem is going to be by changing the hearts of people and who you deal with and how you deal with them. Government, by its nature, is coercive. We take money from people and we spend it, and we force people to do things they don't want to do. That's what government does. And when you do that, you're always creating resentment in somebody. And it's like, Reverend Thomas, you'll know, when you give the gift, the person who gives the gift gets more than the person who receives the gift, you know? But government doesn't give gifts. Government takes from somebody to give to somebody else, and often the person that was taken from has resentment for that. But at the same time, we do have an obligation as a government to stand up and say that this is the right thing to do, to set an example for what we feel like is the right way to live and the right ideals and principles that we want people to live by. And I respect that. And trust me, that's somewhere where I think we can get. I'm just not convinced that this commission as presented is the way to do it. And I tend to agree with Ms. Peters that I feel like we can get there. I think this needs a little bit more study and a little bit more fleshing out to be able to determine some parameters that it needs to operate within, so that when you come back in a year, we're going to get things that the city is legally able to do, and not outside of that. So as it's presented, I can't support it as it's presented. I understand the why, I just don't agree with the how. And my preference would be to take a little more time to delay and study this and get something back to council that is a little more tight, and is a little bit easier to understand. So that's my position.
Mr. Mayor, if you allow me.
Yes.
I'm grateful for this opportunity. I do not for one second take for granted this chance we have to have discourse and to deliberate and to discuss about something that is very important. Our city is catalyzing itself. We have, for the past several years, been doing what some would have considered to be the impossible. And as I came into government, what was often said to me was that this sort of revitalization, that it's an economic tide. And my point to everyone I spoke to is that economic tides are powerful to lift all of the boats except for those that are anchored down and except for those that have leaks in them. And I've often said if we're going to do revitalization right, we had better address the boats that have those anchors and those leaks. There's something I'm hearing this evening that is pretty important, and so I want to juxtapose a couple of things to ensure that we're all having the same sort of context, the same conversation, reading from the same sheet of music here, because I think we can get to one mind and one agreement. You know, Dr. King wrote this letter from a Birmingham jail. And it was a powerful thing, and those of us here who have alluded to being students of history, we know that letter. And we know that what Dr. King spoke to when he referenced the conservative ministers and those of various groups and organizations that said, hey, we get what you want, we understand your reason, we're just a little perplexed with the how, and we just think we need a little more time. And Dr. King's response to that was, it's easy to ask folks to wait when you're not the one that's waiting. And you know, I mean, you guys know me. I got a whole list over here, but I'm gonna try to do my best to keep it summarized, if you don't mind. So, you know, we're having this conversation about the name. I've personally been one who, I mean, heck, I believe in getting work done. I don't actually like all the newspaper headlines. I really just care about the work. But while we're having conversations about names and about people getting upset, I do want to be clear that whatever effort we undertake, if you allow it, the term will be vilified. It will be made out to be a boogeyman. I know it because 12 months ago, had I said critical race theory to you, you would never thought anything. But now I whisper in someone's ear and their hair stand up and they might just jump through the roof because now that word has meaning. That term has meaning. So I want to be clear that we can get caught up on any term we want to, but I do want to be clear about another thing because I'm also very sober-minded on this, that for me the name ain't that important because ultimately when I did shake hands and kiss babies and knock on doors and pledge to folks that I would serve them, I said that I would care more about the work than about all the stuff that's romantic and waxing poetic. So I do want to be clear that when we get done with this, my focus is how we get to outcomes, not to all the stuff that's all fluffy and romantic. We'll talk about another thing. There's this point about how we may not be able to address all of the issues, that sometimes government just can't fix everything. I do believe that, I mean, everyone up here is a politician. There's other politicians in the room. I don't think that was our phrase when we went campaigning. I think that when we campaigned, we told people that their problems, we would do our best to address those solutions. In fact, a decade ago, when there was the High Point project to ignite High Point, the same arguments were made that maybe it just ain't government's job to bring businesses. Ultimately, we can't impact what's in a business owner's heart. If they don't want to come to our city, they don't want to come to our city. But you had a city council who stood up and said, doggone it, this is our city. If something's to be done, we can do it. And they did it. And lo, it was done. So it's my thinking that we do have the wherewithal, we do have the ability, we can do it, and now it just comes down to why should we do it. There was a conversation around, you know, does this point back to too much history and perhaps give us too much of a reconciling of those issues that might tear us apart more than drive us together. I do think that the primary point here ain't about going down in history. I think the primary point here is that that study that Councilman Holmes referenced, well, that study went from 1967. That study was from now. Yeah. And so the issue is not about what happened over hundreds of years. The issue is that across every single measurable outcome, Black people are at the bottom. Those who are locked up, those who don't get to finish school, those who have terminal illness, those with higher infant mortality rates, those who end up homeless, those with mental health disease. I mean, the list could literally go on and on. At every single measurable outcome, we're at the bottom. And so when you talk about the why, this ain't about some sort of novel conversation to get people riled up about our history. This is because right now in communities, people are dying, getting sick, living outside, and it's all because, I don't know, government thinks they can't fix it. I got a couple other thoughts here. I think that we are doing great work currently. I think that the initiatives we are doing, very much internal though. And I think that was right. I think we had to do that first. I think that before you go out to do, you kind of got to get things right on the inside so that way you can build from a strong foundation. That way this organization of nearly 1,400 employees has the right sort of core and values that can go out and do some things. So I'm very proud of the internal initiatives we've done, but we've got to create the single most livable, safe, and prosperous community in America. That means we've got to look at what sort of external solutions do we have. And so I come to the point in which I think we get to talk about potential solutions. I think right now, in terms of semantics, we've got a resolution offered by an organization with a commission that's got these specific sort of guidelines. But what I also hear, the spirit of it, and forgive me, Mayor Sims, if I misquote you, the point here really is, dog, let's have the commission and then figure that out. We can figure out the scope of work, we can figure out the timeline, we can figure out the roles and responsibilities, we can figure out the deliverables there. If anyone has any hesitation about where that sends us, well, then you put some parameters in place. Ensure that we know that the challenge is every single one of those outcomes that is terrible, that says that if you're black, you're more likely to have each and every single one of these terrible outcomes happen to you. The challenge is to address those outcomes. And then in terms of the rest of the parameters, we can say to the commission, let's continue to approve those things along the way. But if we don't have the commission and the conversation doesn't start, I guarantee you it's going to fall through the cracks, because we were supposed to get updates regularly about our diversity initiatives, and I ain't heard about that in about 6 months. So I just want to be honest that there's a lot of, I mean, heck, dog, we can go back and forth about a lot of things up here. But the truth is, the thing we have to ask ourselves, is the problem big enough to do something about? And if the problem's big enough to do something about, I mean, we got to fix it. Because ultimately, while government has the choice today to be involved in how we address these outcomes, I think that's because government was absolutely involved in the outcomes, like the work that got us here. It was government that made redlining. It was government that told you, if you escape with another black slave, we will literally kill you unless you come back. And if you come back, we'll give you your freedom. Just make sure you bring the black slave back. I mean, government made that law. That was government's law. Government gave laws for voting rights. Governments gave laws in terms of literacy. Governments gave all the laws that kept the communities down. And I don't think it's government's time to say, you know, I know I spent hundreds of years creating a problem, but I mean, heck, can we really fix the problem now? I don't think that's it.
I'm sorry.
Councilman Holmes, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to give a more recent example of government in action. Right here in our city was a problem that the city inherited with a neighborhood that was annexed into our city. For the last 25 years, the city experienced flooding to the point to where it became a danger to the citizens. They couldn't get out. Their property was being washed away. I'm very proud to say that I initiated, it's in my ward, I initiated the discussion on that. We went back and forth about what we could do as a city to alleviate this problem. But we came together as a city, and the city government took action to solve the problem in Foxwood Meadows. We spent dollars to rectify that problem. We inherited this problem. It was annexed into the city. It wasn't something that the city created, but the city solved the problem. So don't say that we can't solve problems. We can absolutely come together and solve problems if there's a collective will for us to do so. So what I don't want us to do is have selective activism when it comes to government.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be selective about how active or how big our government is going to be because we're afraid of the terminology that we're going to use. If we're going to be bold in one area, let's be bold in every area.
Ms. Peters, did you have something to say, or was it Mr. Moore? I can't remember which one was trying to speak.
Yeah, well, okay, I was, so I did start too, and then, and thank you, Cyril, I was thinking about government too, you know. I've always liked less government, and I always thought, well, you know, government shouldn't really be involved in this, until I started doing the Racial Equity Institute training, and realized that it was government 400 years ago that said, you can't own land unless you're a white man. Oh, okay, wow, you couldn't even own land if you were a white woman. So anyway, so the government did kind of start all this, but anyway, so then I was taking notes about, you know, possibly making an alternate motion that I don't know if will make some folks mad, but, you know, when I read the one about the commission, it says, the commission will focus on one high point, bringing to bear the necessary resources to address our ongoing struggle. We envision Black families filling our baseball stadiums and participating in the viability of our downtown. We envision Black businesses occupying offices in Congdon Yards. The commission will show that full participation of the entire community makes our community stronger and creates ecosystems focused on making High Point a great place to work, live, and raise our families. The commission will be given a timeline for recommendations to the city, and the life of the commission will end at such time as mutually agreed upon goals are met. That sounds awesome, and that's exactly what I want to see happen in High Point. But then in number 3, under the resolution, it says the duties that the commission shall perform. It says identify, compile, and synthesize the relevant corpus of evidentiary documentation of the institution of slavery in the state of North Carolina and the city of High Point, which existed from 1750 through 1865. The capture and procurement of Africans for slavery in the state of North Carolina and the city of High Point. So I don't even know what to say. I mean, I understand that that is what you're addressing because it happened and it was not fair. But I don't know how studying all that is going to help us to get to this, because all that, I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm kind of going on and on, but I want this, and I don't know how to get there. I definitely think that, I think what Matt said, change, you can't have change until you face it. You can't face it until it's changed. So anyway, I always believe in conversation. You cannot move forward without conversation, and you got to bring the right people to the table. I don't think anybody has all the answers, but I do think that it is time in High Point to bring the conversation about, to have a commission that can speak with staff, maybe work with Joanne on what our legal ramifications can be. And so I don't know. I'm very passionate about this, but I'm also a little bit, confused and.
Mr. Mayor, if I can.
Yes,
All
Councilman.
right, this is Chris Williams again. So I'm about to do something that my wife says is very annoying. I'm a very pragmatic person, okay? I just believe in a straight line from one point to the next. The only thing I would say to this is really simple. We definitely want to make sure that it's focused on pushing to understanding how we may have gotten to this point, but how we can fix those points. That needs to stay focused on. And being that there's a connection on the timetable here, I think that part should stay focused on about getting the work done. And my suggestion, because I have had discussions with our attorney on this, I've also talked to other outside sources. I think I spoke to Pastor Lilly about that. I want also realistic solutions. I don't want to tell y'all it's going to be a pie in the sky from the city. We don't know what it's going to look like. That's going to be the work of the commission. But we want to make sure that it's realistic too. If we walk in here and tell us, or say this to council, and we legally cannot do that, that needs to be understood, and we can walk with you to the state. We can advocate on the federal level about those restrictions that we have. But remember, please, and I know Mayor Sims remember this also, or anybody that served on council, our powers come from the state, okay? And some of those things that we just need to understand, that we know what those restrictions are. I don't want that commission to waste 1 second on proposing something that we can't say, well, we can't do that, but we can ask the state. I don't want you to waste that time. I want solutions that we can do with the city. I do believe there's opportunity that we can meet as the city, and I want to make sure that we hit every point of them that's possible. I know it is. So, just like we were able to come up with these other things that didn't exist before this body, there's another opportunity for us to see those challenges, and I trust it. I would just say, if nothing else, have at least one good lawyer. I don't know what specialty he would have to understand that when it comes to municipal, whatever specialty, but just need to have someone on that board that can say, listen, y'all, if we could probably do this, but it's got to come from somewhere else to allow us to do that. And just so you know that I'm being very practical on this. When we were doing some of the blight remediation stuff, we had to get $225,000 technical assistance from an outside organization to help us work with our county and our state officials to get us to the point where we can do some of the things we're doing now. Couldn't do it before. We had to do that. So that's all I am. I'm just saying that we want to make sure that it's going to be something that's going to be beneficial to our citizens, because as Councilman Holmes brought up, when he mentioned those areas, that's predominantly where I represent, and I live in there. And I've lived all my life there, and I know exactly what he's talking about. I know how hard it was, you know, and I want to see the difference too. Definitely want to see the difference. I just want to make sure that we are focused, or that organization, this commission is focused on what it's going to do, and that we don't get too varied off on stuff and we waste time, because people do need it. We do need it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I
Yes.
close? I'm sorry, I know
Councilman
this has
Hudson.
gone on.
Okay.
It's gone on a while. I see you. I want you to see me as well. And I wasn't going to share, but I speak my mind because I can't do anything else. I want to disclose my great-great-grandfather had 8 slaves. My great-great-great-grandfather had 11 slaves. I know their names because of ancestry. My grandfather and my grandmother and my other grandfather and my other grandmother slung the N-word around daily, by the minute. My parents didn't, so I was taught better. So I tell you this to let you know, I see you, I hear you, I will vote for this. You're my brothers, you're my sisters. I won't vote for this because I owe you, I vote for it because it's the right thing to do. So I honor you, it's my pleasure to vote for this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard? Okay.
I'd like to make, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, just some cleaning up stuff. So, Madam Manager, I know in part of our trying to figure this out, we've got other commissions that we do, and staff, you all probably have the capacity to do some research on some of these things in terms of who, what, when, where, and how. And council could ultimately approve all of that. Would love to hear you speak to that, but what I also think, I think 2 things can be true. I don't think you have cons to tonight deciding that we're going to have a commission. The other thing that can be true is that in terms of figuring out the who, what, when, where, and how can be something that we say, hey, in 2 weeks when we reconvene, if we've got some recommendations on that, let's deliberate and then decide on that. But I think the important thing, and I'm just thinking of all the incredible souls who showed up tonight because they want to see this work move forward. Yep. I think we could move forward with a resolve to have the commission decide in 2 weeks, if, Madam Manager, if you think that's enough time. I know we've been putting a lot of stuff to 2 weeks from now, but if you feel like that's enough time for you all to bring us those thoughts and recommendations, then we can deliberate and look at that, maybe get it ahead of time to figure out the who, what, when, where, and how. We could even, and not to speak for Mayor Sims, but if she's able, just because I heard her speak so very clearly about everything here, if she's able to make herself available to maybe give some thought on some of those things there. So that way, when we get it back, whether we decide in 2 weeks or 4 weeks, we've got some real clear sort of thoughts on the logistics. But tonight, I think we can have a commission tonight. I don't see why we can't. That's kind of my thinking. And actually, I was about to make an alternate motion that's kind of to that effect.
You're certainly welcome to do that.
Am I welcome to do that?
Sure.
Thank you.
You have the floor.
So my alternate motion is that we resolve to have, and I'm actually going to borrow Councilwoman Peters' term, we resolve to have a One High Point Commission with its why being that there are bad outcomes in communities of color, and specifically in the African American community, and that this commission needs to look at that, the history, and look to help us come up with solutions to address that. That's the why. But the logistics, the who, what, when, how, where, be something that we actually vote on maybe either in 2 weeks or 4 weeks, depending on where Madam Manager thinks they can get that from. But tonight, we resolved to have the commission. That's my motion.
Second.
Okay.
That's what the renaming?
So there's a motion and a second. So in effect, what we're now doing, just to be clear, is we're not voting on the specific wording of this. We're going to spend the next 2 to 4 weeks figuring out what it's going to be.
Yeah, and truth be told, they've got a great, I think, starting place in terms of logistics, which I think gets us to the conversation. You and Councilman Williams made great points in terms of some things are just not in the purview of council, and we need to have that sort of conversation and sort of how we choose members. We still got to figure that out and who's being represented. I think there are a number of logistics in there that can be worked out, but the why is very clear to me, and the why is this big challenge of there are gross and terrible and distressing outcomes for Black people, and we got to fix that. That's just the why. Have a commission to do that, and then the logistics we get recommendations on for further approval. And Madam Manager, you thinking 2 weeks, or you think we need 4 weeks for you to pull that together?
Councilmember Jefferson, I think that it would take us a little bit longer than 2 weeks to try to pull that together. What's being proposed in the substitute motion is different than what the original resolution that was presented speaks to. I think that if you're trying to make sure that there is buy-in and consensus around how the commission moves forward, you've got to have some time to have some conversation with members from the NAACP and also members from the city to make sure that we're on the same page. The city council in its authority could establish a commission, and they could establish a commission and appoint members in ways that we've appointed commissions in the past. But I think that what the conversation has been here is doing it in a way that's collaborative and in a way that the NAACP feels like their interests are being met, and also the city as well. So I think that just having a staff group come back and present those options to you in 2 weeks would be doing the effort a disservice. So I think that if we really want to try to get the structure of the commission right in a way that council can support it, and also members of the NAACP feel like they can support it, we would need a little bit more time.
Okay.
And I'm happy to have our staff identify some members that we think need to be at the table, and to bring that to you all, and we can have some conversations about that and work to have something back to you within those 4 weeks. But again, it's going to be a combination of us having to have members of the NAACP sitting down with us to work out those details.
Yeah, that's totally fine with me. I think if you come in 4 weeks, and even if you haven't got the whole thing figured out, at least some updates help us.
Absolutely.
I think at this point, we just got to ensure the ball doesn't drop. There's no gaps in us moving this forward, and that we've already resolved that we will do the commission.
Okay.
Can I ask, does the NAACP feel like that's sweeping it under the floor? Is that acceptable? Or do you want action tonight?
There is some unreadiness about the proposal. However, I understand that it could possibly be a way forward. What it means, though, in effect, is that the resolution as presented to the city council, right, is going to be voted down, all right, in its entirety. And the substitute is that you're going to vote for a commission, which the details will be made definite later, at a later point in history. But I just want to be clear that from the discussion that I hear this evening is that the resolution as presented will not be passed. That in lieu of it, we have the proposal that was made by the council member at the end.
That's correct. If the substitute motion is approved, then no action will be taken on the earlier motion to approve the resolution as presented.
Right.
That's correct.
Okay.
Is there any other debate on the substitute motion?
I'm sorry. I don't want to be contentious. Yeah, I think that's just sweeping it under the rug. I mean, I think it's just pushing it down the road. I mean, I want to make sure that you all know things change. Things are happening. I don't want to sweep this under the rug. I want to vote for the original motion. I'm opposed to the substitute simply for the fact that it's pushing it down, kicking the can a little further down the road. So that's all I have to say.
With due respect, Councilman Hudson, there seems to have been comments without votes being cast or indications of which way people may go or may not. But there was more than a handful of questions sitting out there that seemed to be important to the efficiency and effectiveness of this commission once if approved and in place. So it's obviously going to involve a government piece and a community piece. And so I think wading through that prudently and carefully to have as much unanimous support as you could get is a wise thing.
Yeah, as it's, like I said, as it's written tonight, it's just not something I can support. But I'm happy that Councilman Jefferson made the suggestion that we do look at some parameters and some, and take a longer look to try to tighten this up a little bit. And that really addresses my concerns. I mean, I'll withhold final judgment till I see what comes out of the next month. But I am willing to support your motion to take a longer look, and let's flesh this out and get something that's a little more specific.
But the commission gets created tonight, though. That's what the point is still, though.
That's right.
Yes,
That the
that's what
commission
my
is created.
understanding of
Yeah.
that.
So the commission's created tonight. In 4 weeks, we'll get an update.
My objection was never to creating a commission. It was more about how that commission is going to function and what is supposed to come out of that. What are the parameters of what's going to be studied, and what are and an understanding, as Councilman Williams said, that whatever comes out of that, if it's going to be effective, it has to be something that we're legally authorized to do. Otherwise, we're just wasting our time. I mean, I don't want to say wasting our time, because the discussion is worth having, okay? But we're not wasting our time, but I just don't want us to come out of this and say, well, you guys have done a great job, but we can't help you. So, Councilwoman Peters.
I just need to make sure that I'm clear on what I understand, what I am supporting, is that I do want to support an alternate motion saying that tonight we vote on creating a commission. Now, in this, then after this, and after what it talked about, what the commission, and they're the ones that says the commission will focus on one high point, but then at the bottom it says, following the adoption of the attached resolution. So we are approving the creation of a commission, but are not adopting the resolution as written.
That's correct.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Okay. Is there any other questions or discussion?
Just really simply, just for the sake of forward momentum, we create the commission, even though they may work over the changes or whatever. They can go ahead and get started on the housekeeping pieces, right? Go ahead and get the appointments in place. Go ahead and you can still have something going forward.
I don't read it that way. Maybe Councilman Jefferson would like to say, but to me, the specifics of how it's going to be made up and the duration and all that is what's supposed to be determined later.
Yeah, that's being worked out. So the resolution and what was provided by the branch gives us at least a baseline to start the conversation. And then, as Madam Manager said, her staff, the branch of NAACP could actually work together on fine-tuning the actual logistics. So today, we're voting to have the One High Point Commission. The logistics, we'll get recommendations on in 4 weeks. If it's updated and completely ready, we can vote on the logistics. If not, we may be able to adopt some of those things depending on how ready it is. It may be that we can adopt how we're doing appointments and adopt what we get started on, but maybe we can't adopt timeline at that point.
Essentially, what we're agreeing to, if I can jump in, is we're agreeing that a commission will exist.
Yeah.
And then all of those details are going to be worked out, and it's going to come back to us.
Okay. I get that. I do. I don't know. I'm almost with Wes on the fence here, because I don't want to hinder the forward progress on at least the membership and the individuals that's going to be selected for the board. I don't know if there's any way that we can separate it from what the motion is saying, but I'm sorry. I kind of feel that that's what's happening a little bit. You know what I mean? I want to move forward, but I don't want to restrict the work that they can do away from, once the commission is created, what can those individuals, at least from the 8 outside folk, can be approached and
Well, so I'll tell you, in my conversations, and Mayor Sims coming to the podium, in my conversations, it was understood that, and really what I heard tonight is you create the commission, and whatever answers we don't have, let's get it sort of figured out. Tonight, we're creating the commission, and the answers we don't have, we get that figured out. And who's gonna figure that out? Except city and NAACP branch. You see what I'm saying? And that's what that is. If while in the figuring out, they get to some understandings of things, I mean, hey, trust me, I don't wanna slow it down either, Chris, but I wanna get to a vote and I wanna see the work done.
Gotcha.
You know about that action.
I got you.
Is there any further discussion? I'm getting ready to call for a vote.
I know you are, but I need to say something before you do that.
Okay, I'll recognize you.
Thank you so much. I believe that based on what we originally submitted to this council and even to the committee, was based on this resolution. Now, I understand that there's some unreadiness on the part of council because there are pieces of this that you need to flush out. And at the end of the day, I still believe that if you're going to, number one, create a commission, one High Point, which is not what we asked for, but that's okay, we asked for a commission. Then the second piece of that needs to be, that commission has to be created in the spirit of the document we submitted to you. You can't leave that open to interpretation, because at that point, it's no longer our resolution, it's what council has decided to do. So you have to recognize the spirit of the document that we brought before you in our request and our ask as we move forward. Now, you may not want all components of this document, I get that. And that's something that has to be worked out during that 4-week period or whatever that time is. But we have to act in the spirit of the resolution that we presented. We're not saying adopt the whole resolution at this point. It'd be lovely if you did, but I know that's not going to happen. So at the end of the day, what we need to do is look at this and say, in the spirit of the resolution that the NAACP presented to us, we will move forward with that commission. But you have to look at what's in this document and the components of it for us to move that forward. There's even a section under administrative provisions that answers your question, Councilman Williams, that says you can appoint as much personnel as you would like to this commission, and they can keep the commission out of the weeds if it comes to that. So if there's legal assistance that is needed, you have a legal staff, they can come back and say, you guys have asked for this, but you can't have it because we can't do it. So let's change what that process is. But I believe that you cannot create this commission without looking at what the ask is. And there is an ask on the table that says this resolution adopted by the local branch of the NAACP has to be taken into consideration as you create that commission.
Yeah, so I'll be clear to say on the motion that I said that document should definitely be taken into consideration during this 4-week planning. So I do want to be clear about that. That's our baseline, like, that's where we start. And then we have discussions to figure out how we get it to what makes sense, yeah.
But I just think it needs to be in your motion.
In the spirit, in the spirit.
In your motion, it has to say that, because otherwise, you guys are starting from scratch. And it becomes your document and not what we submitted.
Forgive me, Mayor Sims, I never made a motion in the spirit of anything. I don't even know what that means.
Okay, well, I don't mean for you to take it that way. But what I am saying is that at the end of the day, based on the way that you stated your motion, it overlooks this document. It overlooks this document. So you all can read it back, but it doesn't say or reference this document at all.
Okay, so
Okay.
can I say this then? I'll make sure the motions, and I'm trying to clean it up right.
You can amend your motion.
So the motion is that we will create one High Point commission and then take the next several weeks to craft what this looks like in the spirit of the resolution presented by the NAACP, so that way we can do this the right way.
Exactly.
Was that right?
I believe the second was.
Is that good?
It gets closer. Okay.
First time for everything.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
so there's a amended substitute motion and a second on the floor. And so this will come back to us hopefully in 4 weeks after being fleshed out for final action on what that commission will look like. Is there any other discussion before we vote? Councilman Moore, do you want to say no? Any other discussion?
Mr. Mays, Mr. Adams, is that an acceptable motion?
With all due respect, It gets us closer, but it was mentioned, with all due respect, it gets us closer, right? We need to see ourselves in this resolution. There's a reason why we said reparations. There's a reason why we mentioned the history, listed it. We need to see ourselves in that resolution. So as you move forward, right, we want you, when she says the spirit, right, we want you to focus. And the same way we focus on giving restitution to people who suffer from unfortunate things, whether it's negligence or a criminal act, we identify who the victims are and we direct the restitution to those individuals. And so I want to be clear, right, that this gets us closer, but not all the way there.
Mr. Mays, if you, when you say see ourselves in the resolution, in the document, that includes everybody in this room, correct?
Well, yes, because the situation we live in is all of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's all of us. And so we can't have this conversation with just me in the room. Right? When I stand here and speak about reparations, I'm talking for my ancestors. And when I speak to you, I'm talking to you and to your ancestors. See, because the people that came before me could not have that conversation with your ancestors.
Yeah.
But we are charged with the responsibility today to have that conversation. And we do it together. Not separate, not apart. And when we talk about this community, it's the coming together of everyone in this community
Thank
to
you.
lift everybody.
I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure that point was clear, because if we're going to go down this road, then we'll need to go down it together.
Yes.
Okay. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? All right. So what we're voting on is the amended substitute motion to create the commission. We're going to flesh out the details in the spirit as presented by the resolution of the NAACP. And I think I'll just call the roll on this one rather than doing hands. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Johnson?
Aye.
Councilwoman Peters?
Aye.
Councilman Moore?
Aye.
Councilman Williams?
Aye.
Councilman Hudson?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Councilman Jefferson?
Aye.
And the mayor votes aye. Vote is approved by a vote, item is approved by a vote of 9-0. Okay. So, next on our agenda are the Community Development Committee items, and for that, I'll turn the meeting over to Councilmember Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. Maybe I'll give it a second.
Yeah. Community Development Committee.
I know, nobody wants to stay. It's so hard.
Land speed record, I'm telling you. Can I do a consent?
But it's all that to be considered. But we gotta get there, we gotta have that conversation. I'm working on that. Only con-
No?
But you're not running, right? I know, right?
I'll try.
I'm trying to give her a few months to absorb that.
It's not, I'm not next.
Okay, first up, sorry, we ready?
Yes.
Okay, all right. The first item is item 2021-406, ordinance of demolition of dwelling 905 Richardson Avenue. I'm going to turn it over, am I turning it over?
Lord.
Yeah, turn it over to Lori
Wake up,
Luce.
Lori.
They told me I was not up next. I'm so lost right now. And just to clarify, it's 908 Richardson? Is that, you said, I believe you said 905.
Oh, I'm sorry, thought I said no.
Okay, just want to make sure we're all on the same page here.
Okay.
All right, good evening again, Mayor, City Council. So tonight, the first property is 908 Richardson Avenue. We originally inspected this property back on October 8th of 2019. We received a complaint about the hole in the roof. We held a hearing on December 5th of 2019 and issued an order to repair or demolish with the compliance date of February 3rd, 2020. Sorry, back up. No one appeared for the hearing. The property was purchased by the current owner on November 17th of 2020. We did record a list pendens on October 8th of 2020 prior to that purchase. We found the current owner, Mr. Izzard, and spoke with him. He said he was aware of the violations and that he was just trying to finish up repairs on 910 Richardson. He had purchased 3 houses together. He stated that he had some delays due to COVID that were affecting his plans. I then spoke to Mr. Izzard back on August 19th of this year. Well, I returned a call from Mr. Izzard, excuse me, where he'd called me on August 19th, and I called him back on August 24th. He still stated he was having issues with getting contractors. He had asked for additional time, and he wanted to send me something in writing. I did tell him it would be coming before City Council and that he would have the opportunity to speak. To my knowledge, I've not received anything in writing from him, email or on paper. And I'm not sure if we did have to obtain a warrant to go and get the pictures of the inside of the house. His attorney directed him not to let us in. And I'm not sure if he's here or not tonight.
All right. Thank you, Laura. So there's someone here to speak for this?
Yeah, I'm Mr. Izzard.
Okay, if you step up and give your name and address for the.
My name is Clarence Izzard. My address is 1347 Bravante Drive, Windermere, Florida. I was born and raised in Greensboro, North Carolina, in the housing projects. I'm a real estate realtor, developer, part-time. My mission and passion in life is to help build safe, quality, affordable housing. So in November of 20, I purchased 4 homes on Richardson Avenue that I wanted to develop for decent public housing, safe housing. I started the process almost immediately in December. I'm showing you a sample of what we did on the very first home in 906. We got a stop work order from the city to apply for permits, which we did. There was a complete stall. I wasn't sure why. I was then told I need to have professionals only to do the job. We continued to try to get professionals to do the job, and they were all literally wiped out by COVID. So I had been in constant contact with the city enforcement office. I took the initiative to contact them. They didn't have to find my information. I wanted to keep them abreast on what I was trying to accomplish, which is to create affordable housing in an underserved community. And then I got a call from her very aggressively saying she was not going to receive my documentation, that she was going to move forward for a demolition. And that's why I'm here today.
All right. Any questions for the?
Mr. Izzard, excuse me, these, the pictures that we're seeing here in the packet, this is the current state of 906?
That's 906, right next door to 908. That was our first project.
So how much would you say you've invested in this renovation to this point?
And that particular one, probably about $20,000.
$20,000?
Yes.
And Lori, this is up for demolition?
No, the one next door, 908.
The one next
I
door.
believe, right. He, like I said previously, he's purchased a few properties.
Right.
There was, I did some research on 906. I don't have it written down here, but he did, he said, I reviewed with, let me just read it verbatim, it is in your notes. He does?
He has provided that.
Oh, okay, I've not seen that, okay.
You need to see
So I returned the call to Mr. Izzard. He did call me on August 19th and spoke with him on August 24th. Mr. Izzard again stated that he was having a difficult time with contractors due to COVID. I advised him that I would be taking this case to council on 9/20. If between these dates he is able to obtain permits and start repairs, we will work with him. I reviewed with him that the permit for the gas pack at 906 Richardson was not completed, and that he stated that he was not aware of that. And it was inspected and completed after we spoke on August 27th, 2021, and that the permit for 910 Richardson Avenue had not been completed yet. He made original application for that property on February 26, 2021. And then this is 908 Richardson that we're talking about tonight.
Mr. Izzard, so this is Councilman Holmes. Is the sole reason why you have been unable to move 908 in the same direction as 906, has it been availability of contractors' resources or permitting restrictions?
It's resources. Yeah, we know we can probably get the permitting once we get the contractor on board. We just needed the assistance of time, and she didn't want to offer that at all. I've been the one aggressively letting them know what I was trying to do with these properties from day one. But she presented this in the spirit that I did not want to keep the community safe. You can see from my statement, all my life, that's all I've done is kept people safe. All my adult life.
So, Joanne, I think this question, you may be able to answer this. In terms of legally, I guess, credit for effort, is there any way that we can offer some type of redress of time? You know, seeing the effort that Mr. Izzard has put into to 906, if his intention is to move 908 and 910
and 910 have all four. They're going to actually look better than 906.
As council, you can offer more time. I handed Ms. Loosemore the same packet that you guys had because I wanted her to be able to see what you had and respond. It sounded like it wasn't the same address that she had brought for you tonight. So might I suggest that you hear from Ms. Loosemore what she has seen with the others, the timing and everything, so that you'd have.
Quick question before she speaks.
Yes, sir.
As Councilman Moore, somewhat familiar with the process you're going through. The subcontractors you may have employed on 906, would they not continue to work with you on 908?
They would have, but these were just subcontractors. They are not licensed. We did cosmetic work, a lot of cosmetic work on 906, which didn't require a license.
So the contractors are the people you hope to have do the work. Are you a general contractor?
I am not, no. But I am trying to find a general contractor who would do that work, and it's been nearly impossible.
Well, I can understand that. But you got the work done on the first house.
Well, I did, yeah, because none of those require a license to get it done, or permits.
And they passed all inspections.
Absolutely. And Housing Authority. I even reached out to Housing Authority, making them aware of my mission and passion. I spoke with Ms. McGill, and Section 8 passed it as well.
And you currently live in Florida?
I do, but I was born and raised in Greensboro. My sister lives here, been here for 30 years. This is my home.
I understand.
Yeah.
But how much time are you spending here trying to secure these contractors and things?
I own a condo in Archdale. I've been living in there for 6 months.
Ms. Loosemore,
In Archdale, on Meadowmead.
I got some questions for Ms. Loosemore.
Okay.
The list pendants that was filed in October of 2020,
Before I bought it.
what was stated on that list pendants? It was a list pendants for what?
Excuse me. Copy of the list pendants right here if you'd like to see it. What we attach when we take it to the courthouse is it states that the City of High Point Community Development and Housing Code Enforcement Division has a case against Carlin Ellison, 804 Mobile Street, and it has the address listed at the bottom as 908 Richardson, and we attach a copy of the hearing sheet to it.
Okay.
And that is what is recorded, and it's stamped October 8th of 2020.
Okay. Do you know how long this roof has been caved in on this house?
No, sir.
I was asking her.
Oh, I was gonna say.
Sorry.
When we received the complaint and started our case, it was October 8th of 2019, we made our first inspection.
Okay, so we're 2 years.
So it's 2 years.
I mean, 2 years that we know about it.
Right.
Because that doesn't look recent to me. And there's a wall that's bowed out too on the side, it appears.
There's a whole wall missing, I believe.
There's no walls, Mr. It's just
Well,
bowled out, as he mentioned.
That's the back of the
908.
house.
Huh?
That is the back of the house.
908.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't see how this house could possibly be salvaged.
And just to state, I'm not sure what his conversations he's had with building inspections. My understanding and my knowledge of what repairs can be made by a landlord in the state of North Carolina is property owners cannot make certain repairs in the state. They cannot do mechanical work, plumbing work, and electrical work. They can do some of the building work. If it exceeds $30,000, though, they have to hire a general contractor.
Yeah.
So that, I'm not sure if he's had that conversation with them or not. As far as, and like I said, I don't believe it's referenced in here that any permits have been applied for 908 Richardson to make any repairs. Have you applied for any permits?
No, we were doing 910 and
Okay.
910 and a half. We put new roofs on both of those properties, and we got the stop work order.
And when did you finish 910?
The roof?
The house?
We
Oh,
have
is
a
that
big-
what you
yeah, we
supplied
applied
pictures
for
of here?
permits. Yes, ma'am. We applied for permits.
And the order to repair or demolish was issued January 3rd, right?
It was issued January 3rd of 2020, yes, with a compliance date of February 3rd of 2020.
All right.
Can I ask another question, just so I can try and gauge some, so the property that you submitted, because I've not, this is 906.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the only thing that 906 had permits for was for the gas pack?
That is correct.
Okay. And you completed that at what date?
I think we wrapped it up in March or April.
Okay. And then 910 has been repaired?
No, we started on 910, and we got the stop work order for permits.
Right, so that's not been completed yet, because
not
you
yet.
have to provide information for that
Absolutely,
permitting.
correct.
So you want to finish 910 before you
Oh,
can
yeah.
finish 908, and this is the state of 908 at this time in this neighborhood.
But we tried
And
to
the
finish
fire
that.
department did place, just as a disclaimer, oops, I don't have it on this picture, but the fire department did also place a red X on this property that they will not enter it if it catches on fire. If Tommy is still here and can clarify that. That's my understanding of the red X. I'm not opposed to going back and meeting with him, but in my dealings, as far as, if we have to wait for 910 to be completed in the permitting, and then for the 908, I think this is just not good for the neighborhood.
I'm going to make a motion to approve the ordinance. I don't see how this house can possibly be salvaged, given the amount of damage that it has. And I think we ought to go ahead and approve the ordinance tonight. And if he wants to go get a contractor or whatever and try to get to work on this thing, he can come back to us in 30 days and let us know if he's got a plan for it. But I don't see any reason why we shouldn't go ahead and approve the ordinance tonight.
Do you understand, you actually have, if the ordinance go forward, you have 30 days to like secure your
Contractor?
GC, and you can have a conversation back with Lori's department and inform us that you do have a GC and the timetable on it, and then we can work with that. But as far as it goes tonight, if the ordinance goes forward, that we will be moving forward with it. So I'm going to second the motion, second one, I guess.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for approval of the ordinance. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I'll
You
just,
clear on that, Mr. Sir?
Yeah, I understand that. I have 30 days to go ahead and secure a general contractor, but also communicate with her.
Sure.
that
You just need to
information.
move, you need to move quickly.
Okay, and that's what I was asking, rather than be here, she wanted no part of that, which really bothered me. Yeah.
And just to clarify also that obtaining the permit does not stop the process. North Carolina permits are valid for 12 months. Just because a permit is issued, we're looking for permits to be issued and repairs to begin and to make progress, just to be clear. Okay. And I'm not opposed to working. We have tried to work with you, and this was already being prepared, so that's why it came before City Council.
Thank you,
Councilman
Mr.
Jones?
Richard. I know,
sorry.
it's government. But Lori does a great job, and it's just
Thank you, Lori.
process and procedures, but I'm sure you'll.
Councilman Jones, you had something?
yeah, I was just gonna add, I mean, I think those other properties may be salvageable, and I'm not trying to tell you to run your business, but I run a couple. I would just demo that one and move on, because it's not, you're not gonna get your money back out of it. You have to make the decisions that are good for your business, that are profitable. That's not a profitable one. I'd pull out that one.
And I'll make that consideration. I just needed somebody to work with me in the process, that's all. And I couldn't get that.
Okay.
So that's why I'm here.
There's a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approval of the ordinance, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes.
All right, Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is item 2021-407, ordinance demolition of dwelling, 1004 Prospect Street adoption, sorry, damn it on me, okay. 1004 Prospect Street adoption of ordinance. I will turn it over to Lori once again.
This property on 1004 Prospect Street, we did an inspection on April 30th of 2019. We received a complaint from the fire department on this property. The current owner, Mr. Body, purchased it on April 22nd of 2020. We had a list pendants recorded on June 13th of 2019. We held a hearing on June 3rd, 2019, and no one appeared for the hearing. We issued an order to repair or demolish on June 3rd, 2019, with the compliance date of July 3rd, 2019. Again, in this same situation, Mr. Body purchased it after the list pendants was recorded. He did apply for a building permit on June 19th of 2020. The property was sold by the original owners, Alan and Tommy Davis, on October 23rd, 2019, to JH Commercial Properties LLC, who then in turn sold it on April 22nd, 2020 to the current owner, Mr. Body. The stop work order was issued on building inspections on May 19th of 2020. The owner applied for the permit. It was issued on 7/24/2020, but did not include any work for trades, electrical, plumbing, or mechanical. And the permit noted that the licensed contractors needed to be added to the permit prior to any of that work commencing. On October 9th of 2020, the inspector spoke with Mr. Body, who stated he planned to repair the house first and then move to 1000 Prospect. He also had recently fired his contractor on January 7th of 2021. The inspector spoke to Mr. Body again, who stated he was working on another project inside the city, would be finishing it up in the next few weeks. It would move to the 4 properties he owns on Prospect, and that he intends to rent them. On March 31st, 2021, an inspector called Mr. Body. He told the inspector he is having a hard time finding workers due to COVID. As of September 7th, 2021, no inspections have been requested on the permit that was issued, and an inspector with the building inspections did meet with Mr. Body on the property on July 7th of 2020 to review the work to be done, and that he would need to add additional contractors to the permit.
Thank you, Laura. Is there any questions for staff? Or is there anyone here to speak for or against this item? In that case, I make the motion to approve item 2021-407, ordinance demolition of dwelling 1004 Prospect Street.
Second.
There's a motion and a second for approval of the ordinance. Is there any discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion is approved by a vote of 9-0.
Last is item 2021-408, ordinance demolition of dwelling 1615 Long Street. Lord.
Okay, so this property, very similar situation, but it has a slightly different outcome possibly. We did the inspection on June 3rd of 2019 at 1615 Long Street. We received a complaint about the condition that it was unsecured. The property was transferred August 5th of 2021 to the current owner, DK Investments 1 LLC. We did have a list pendants recorded on April 7th of 2020. We held a hearing on June 17th of 2019. No one appeared for the hearing. An order to repair or demolish was issued on July 17th of 2019. In your notes, as you can see, and I'll save this one because it's, again, just where property was transferred within the same ownership, different LLCs. But the owners did come in today and apply for permits to do the demolition work. I do not believe it was issued quite yet. I can double check tomorrow. I'm still bringing it because, for an ordinance, because the owners could just stop and not actually do the demolition. So that's why I'm continuing to bring it here.
All right. Thank you, Laura. Any questions for staff? Or is there anyone here to speak for or against this item? All right. In that case, I move forward with move for approval of item 2021-408, ordinance demolition of dwelling 1615 Long Street.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for approval of this item. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approval of the ordinance, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? That motion passes. All right.
That's all I have.
Is that it? Okay. Under planning and development, I'll be handling those items. There are several regular agenda items and a few public hearings. First item is 2021-409, minor amendment to site plan for special use permit 16-02 regarding Wesleyan Education Center.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, very briefly, Herb Shannon, Senior Planner with the Planning and Development Department. This is a request from the Wesleyan Education Center to update their special use master plan for their school at the intersection of Johnson Street and Sandy Ridge Road. This site attained approval in 2013 and had a binding site plan. They've put in their educational fields, and prior to starting on their school, they just want to do 3 minor changes: relocate the amphitheater to the southern portion of their site, put in a fitness outdoor rope course in the southern portion of the site, and add a teaching barn with classrooms. All of these improvements are in areas that were previously for parking, so it's not expanding the limits of development. Staff has evaluated this request and notes that it does meet the requirements for a minor amendment, and we recommend approval of this request. The applicant is here if you have any additional questions, and included in your package are site plans if you have questions as to the location of those improvements. I would note that all these improvements on the southern portion of the site are either next to streams or a transmission line, so there is sufficient separation from the abutting neighborhood.
What are they going to teach in the barn?
You don't want to know.
The applicant's representative is here.
Are we bringing back cowboys?
We'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Luke Dickey with Stimmel Associates, the site plan preparer for Wesleyan. So 601 North Trade Street, Suite 200, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So yeah, the teaching barn is kind of more for bringing in kind of equestrian, so probably some horses to help in a teaching environment. So they'll partner with groups to be able to come in and be able to do that with them. So it's not really fully stabling there in that location, but it's to help them be able to bring that program from an off-site.
Thank you very much.
Okay, not a public hearing item, it's just a minor amendment. So is there any discussion among the group? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion then to approve this item. Is there a second? There's a second from Councilman Williams. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion passes by a vote of 9-0. Okay, next item. This is a request to initiate some zoning map amendments for the airport overlay. Are you speaking to that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Chris Andrews with the Planning Department. This item is a request to initiate zoning map amendments that were related to the airport overlay district. You may recall that former Director Burnett presented to council at the July 19th special meeting the findings of the most recent Part 150 airport overlay study. Those are attached for your review or your information. However, the request tonight is simply to request to initiate the rezoning process required to amend that overlay district. There's no request or approval based on the recommendations from July's presentation. What will follow is public notification, as well as the proposed amendments, as well as community meetings related to those changes. The details have not been finalized as to how the public outreach will go at this point, but this initiation gives staff some added confirmation to continue that process. And this is very similar to the initiation process that the comprehensive zoning map amendment process has followed. And staff will come back to council with a formal zoning map amendment, as well as probably some text amendment and possible land use plan amendments as a result of that airport overlay. But we need to begin the public process to be able to do that.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Okay. Then I make a motion for approval of this item 2021-410. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilman Jefferson. Any discussion on this item? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes by a vote of 9-0. Next item is resolution of intent to establish a public hearing date of November 1st to consider the voluntary non-contiguous annexation of approximately 74 acres along the north and south sides of Cox Avenue and west of Jackson Lake Road. This is Guilford County tax parcels 161,559 and 157,930, and I move for approval.
Second.
So a motion and a second for approval of the resolution of intent. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Next is another resolution of intent to establish a public hearing date of November 1st, 2021, to consider a voluntary contiguous annexation of approximately 27 acres located at the southeast corner of West Wendover Avenue and Penny Road. Property site is also known as Guilford County tax parcels 196671, 196672, 170002, 170004, 170005, and 170006. I move for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Williams. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes by a vote of 9-0. We have several items on for public hearing tonight. The first one is street abandonment case 21-01, Vitessa High Point, Inc. For that, I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Chris Andrews again with the Planning Department. Staff did receive an application for a street abandonment by Vitessa High Point to abandon the entire width of a 60-foot unnamed and unimproved right-of-way that is adjacent to the northeastern property line of Vitessa's property at 200 Southwest Point Avenue. This is located in the southwest portion of, just southwest of downtown High Point. The right-of-way was recorded as part of a plat in 1978 and was subsequently dedicated to the city and accepted with the intention of constructing a street. No street was ever constructed. The city's technical review committee reviewed this request and stated no objections. However, there were some public and private utility service providers that requested 2 easements that would remain in place. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this request at their August 24th public hearing, where they recommended approval of this request by a vote of 7-0. If there's any questions of staff, I would be happy to answer them.
Any questions for staff? Is there anyone here from Vitessa? Would you like to be heard on this, or?
No, sir. I'm just here to answer any questions if any of that.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone have any questions for the applicant?
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Well, there's a public hearing, so, but I'll go ahead and accept the motion and the second. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak on this item? I think just about everybody else is staff, except for a couple of folks. All right. Is there any discussion among the council members on the motion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approval of this item, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes. All right. Next item is a public hearing for zoning map amendment 21-15, Furniture Avenue LLC.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Herb Shannon once again. This is a request to rezone a 4.8-acre parcel from its current conditional use general business and conditional use light industrial, both which was established in 1994. The applicant's requesting rezoning to a conditional zoning GB district to alleviate some code violation issues. The applicant was cited by our enforcement department for developing a statue garden in a watershed critical area without land development and disturbance permit, and also for violating zoning conditions that were established in 1994 that prohibited any type of outdoor display. The applicant is proposing to update the zoning conditions to carry forward all the previous conditions from 1994, except for the prohibition on outdoor display. In evaluating this request, there is a stream that runs through the site, and the main purpose of that condition was to not have any type of display area along the Business 85 corridor. That corridor plan proposes to keep that area as much as natural as possible. Due to the location of the stream on the site, the proposed area where the applicant wants to do the outdoor statue garden is facing internally. The site abuts a quarry, a cemetery, and the deep river, so allowing that outdoor display facing internally to the site would not negatively affect any adjacent property owners, and staff is recommending approval. The P&Z reviewed this request at their August public hearing and recommended approval, and included in your staff report is the consistency statement and reasonable statement that the Planning and Zoning Commission is forwarding to you. There were no speakers in opposition at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
Thank you. Is there anyone here from the applicant who'd like to be heard? Yes, sir. If you could come forward to the lectern and give us your name, you'll be recognized.
Can you take this off?
You can take it off. Yes, sir.
Mayor, City Council, members of the City of High Point. My name is George Eos. I'm the owner of the IMS. I've been an active member of High Point for about 35 years. My company has always had a presence here. I wind up spending several months, a year up here, but I winded up moving to North Carolina for a second residence. We originally owned the Hamilton and Kivett corner, which was a very beautiful strategic corner. I winded up selling it to the Marquardt company who built that beautiful white building. So it was a big deal for us because during the time when Vegas was coming into High Point, and I really don't want to waste all your time tonight because I know how much of a night you've had, but it's been important to me. I was able to hold on to the property, and I had a lot of stress. I had originally a dream to develop that building, and I started constructing it. I wasn't able to financially finish the second, third stories. I winded up selling it, and then I reinvested the money down on Furniture Avenue. And Furniture Avenue is a unique, it was a dream, but it was a very viable situation. High Point, and I've been in retail furniture as well, High Point across the whole country has recognition as the furniture capital of our country. And someone had the vision to go out to that area and say, you know, we're going to do $1 billion in retail sales for the city of High Point. Now, Furnitureland South, which is across the street in Jamestown, does a big job over there. But I saw an opportunity to buy a beautiful property that had potential. I bought the property across the street from me as well because that was actually supposed to be a Klausner furniture store, and he never built it. It's got a problem on the property because it's got the stream running through it, so you have a lot of area you can't really use. Well, I had always been a company that sold outdoor specialty pieces like garden fountains and gazebos and things, and we always were on the cover of the High Point newspaper for having something spectacular at our corner over there. In fact, we winded up selling the Neptune fountain to a park in Arcadia, which was probably the most expensive thing High Point ever sold. And we're known for having some specialty things. So I told my guys, I said, go across the street and put those fountains up there. That'll look good. They might be able to see it from the highway. And I had got a little nervous. I said, you know, it's not going to look good without a concrete pad. So I brought in a contractor, and I'm not claiming I did it right, I don't know. But I asked him, I said, do we need a permit to put a concrete pad on this property? And he said, no, you're far enough from the watershed, you're fine, I've been doing this for a long time. Well, it turns out that the combination created a violation, which the city has been very helpful trying to help me fix. I think, and we are a pretty good sales tax contributor to the base, but I think there's a lot of potential over there. We are getting a good amount of business. It's been tough with the pandemic and supply, and everything is a nightmare in our industry right now, but I mean, I believe in it. So I appreciate the support. I'd ask that you approve it and allow me to have a little bit of a garden center out there. Little decorations. It's nice, tasteful things, too.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions for the applicant? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Is there anyone here to speak for or against this item? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to make the motion to approve this item, and I'm going to state that zoning map amendment 21-16 for the requested CZGB zoning is supported by the community regional commercial land use classification of the adopted land use plan. Furthermore, because development activity will be oriented toward Furniture Avenue and watershed standards will limit the intensity of built-upon area, it would be reasonable to permit some limited outdoor retail display activity at this location. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second for approval. Is there any discussion?
I'd just like to say thank you. I appreciate you staying, knowing that you had favorable approval through this rather long meeting. Appreciate your years here in High Point. Yeah, I understand.
But I hope your stomach's not growling too much.
But we wish you nothing but success out there. And
Yeah. Thank you for doing business in High Point. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Yeah, that motion passes. Thank you very much.
And if anyone hasn't been out there, y'all should go, because he's got some really cool stuff.
Is it the kind of place I should not take my wife to?
well, if it's a
I
motion,
mean, it's some really cool stuff.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, I'm a little worried. Okay, next item is zoning map amendment 21-16, which is resolution of the city of High Point for a zoning map amendment for a bunch of properties.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Herb Shannon once again. This is a continuation of the comprehensive zoning map amendment project where staff is evaluating various areas of the city. Tonight, we're focusing on some land off of Baker Road and East Fairfield. The first is a neighborhood off of Nance and Gaines Avenue. It's almost all single-family, but the zoning is multifamily. There was a concern with development being placed in that area, putting an apartment complex in the middle of an established single-family neighborhood. So staff is recommending rezoning the area from the RM16 district to the R5 district to more accurately reflect how that area has been developed for the past 40 years. The second is dealing with a condominium property off of Belmont. In 1998, it received zoning approval. Only one part of that condo had conditions. Those conditions have been met, so staff is just recommending removing those conditions. So instead of it being conditional use RM16, it's just RM16. And finally, off of Allen J. Road, in 2010, a MOS received zoning approval for that location, but with the update of the zoning ordinance, that institutional district is more intended for large campus-like settings. So staff is recommending rezoning the site to the RM16 district. It will still allow that religious institution, but just more accurately reflects how that area is zoned and developed. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed these requests at their August public hearing and recommended approval and forward the consistency and reasonable statement to you. I would note we sent out early notices this summer and also zoning notices. We received about 80 phone calls, but once staff explained to the residents the intent, they were all in support of this request.
Thank you. We are the applicant, so we've heard from the applicant. Is there anyone present who would like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing no one, I will make a motion for approval of the item and state that the zoning map amendment is consistent with the city's adopted policy guidance because the zoning map amendments for these residential neighborhoods and institutional uses are supported by goal number 1 of the land use plan, which speaks to encouraging development that enhances and preserves established neighborhoods. Furthermore, the amendments are needed to match the manner in which these neighborhoods have developed and to remove unneeded restrictions on the properties. Is there a second? Second? Okay. Seconded by Councilman Johnson. Is there any discussion on this item? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approval of the item, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes by a vote of 9-0. Next, we have several items on our general business agenda, actually just two. One is a resolution of support for the reelection of Randy McCaslin to the Electricity's Board of Directors for a 3-year term, and I move for approval. Is there a second? Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Moore. Any discussion on this item?
We're not going to ask any questions, Randy.
Keep doing a good job. Keep our rates down. All right.
I want to go do a tour.
Yeah, we've been talking about it for years, go visit the plant.
you can pass the background test.
We'll take pictures for you, Monica.
I got a fake ID.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that real loudly, because you definitely won't pass the background test. Okay, all those in favor of approval of this item, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes by a vote of 9-0. We've already done the reappointments. There's one item in pending. You're just such a sport. Stay around. Man. Do we need to actually vote to take this out of pending? Yes, we do. Okay, I will make a motion to take this item regarding our banking service provider out of pending. Is there a second?
Second.
It's seconded by Councilman Holmes. Is there any opposition to pulling this item out of pending? Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes by a vote of 9-0. Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. This is an item that was postponed from the September 6th or August 16th meeting. Every 5 years, staff goes out, does an RFP for banking services. The decision is ultimately, obviously, council's to award the contract. The purpose of 5 years is to ensure that we get the most competitive rates that we can. And also, if we decide to change banks, that the investment is amortized over that life of the contract, rather than redoing that investment every couple of years or so. I do want to give a brief overview of the RFP process. We sent our RFP out to 13 banks that had a location in the city. We received 7 back. A committee of customer service and finance staff evaluated those RFPs. This is just the written response to our RFP. We invited the top 2 scorers in for a demonstration phase. After the scores were tallied from customer service and finance staff, as well as user feedback from those that would actually use the banking system outside of just the committee, Bank of America received a higher score. So as a reminder, staff's recommendations to continue our relationship with Bank of America. We are satisfied with their customer service that we're receiving. There have been several technology improvements, especially on their online system. There are several things we can do now that we couldn't do 5 years ago, and they have several products in the pipeline that will make us more efficient and continue to add value to this relationship. As part of the outcome of this RFP process is that there are no analysis fees for the first year, so that's a calendar year of January through December, and they are proposing to add an additional courier credit to us so that we no longer have to have park rangers carrying our deposits from North Point to City Hall for the main courier. So there is another benefit there. The estimated cost difference over the 5-year agreement between the 2 banks that came in for the demonstration round is approximately $10,000 a year. Implementation and conversion costs were previously given to council at about a $25,000 to $30,000 range. So I will say that we were not proposing a change at the time, so we used an estimate that sounded reasonable to us that we had uncovered from prior RFP processes. We know there's going to be some programming changes, right? We knew there was some conversion cost. It seemed reasonable. And then we also asked you to consider the workload of IT, customer service, finance staff. To address some of the concerns we heard from council at the last meeting, I did want to point out that we are by no means, and you all are by no means just always going with a larger bank. There have been 3 banking relationships approved by this city council in the last year and a half. 2 of those were to Pinnacle Bank, 2 bond issuances that total more than $31 million. On the other side, Bank of America received 1 installment financing agreement during that same period of time. So we are doing our best to work with other banks through RFP processes, through competitive processes, as well as making sure that we're engaging with all the banks in the community whenever we can. I do want to go over the cost of transition if we were to go with a new bank. There was about 10 staff members that put a couple dozen hours into coming up with these costs, including reaching out to third-party vendors when necessary. In total, we're looking at a 4 to 6 month transition period between the 2 banks, and really we're going to have to keep I would not be comfortable closing our Bank of America account at least until June or so. We have lots of partners that directly deposit to us, and I trust most of them to update the information, but especially the second half of our ARPA money coming in May, I don't want the chance for $11 million to bounce back to the feds. So we would probably keep it open longer. We did define the transition as well as try to calculate staff hours that would be dedicated to this. There's a define phase, a design phase, a deliver phase, and a review phase. Just with any other implementations, pretty common terminology you all may be familiar with. In all, we totaled about 1,259 staff hours to complete this project. Direct costs of consultants, so the big one up there is RPI, who handles our, really any reprogramming that happens in our ERP system. So this is a very delicate process that is going to have a lot of connections throughout our ERP system and our billing system. Our IT group, our IT systems and development manager is here. He will tell you they support a lot of systems, right, for the city. They don't necessarily have the expertise in-house to make sure that everything is managed that the change is managed precisely. They will be working alongside of RPI, and any approvals have to go through them. But RPI is doing this, for other localities that have our Lawson ERP system, that have Kayenta. So some of this is going to be done in-house, but there is an outside component as well. And then there's a couple other direct costs associated with keeping the Bank of America checking account alive while we transition. And then there's a small charge in there for reprogramming our Check 21 machine that eats all the checks and deposits them into our account. I also wanted to highlight some of the IT projects that we felt would be disturbed by this conversion at this point. The big one up there is the Lawson ERP upgrade. It's been coming for a while. We've done small upgrades, but now we're at the phase where we're actually going to be potentially making sure that Lawson and Infor can continue to service, or if we actually will go out for another ERP system, another implementation. So these are all worthwhile projects, but I do want to point to that one as being a big one. Approximately 260 hours of the design and deliver phase are just our IT staff having to support us through this transition, which is not a project that's currently on their list to do. I do have like I said, an IT manager. I have our treasury manager. Bob Martin is with us in spirit. He didn't make it to the meeting, but we can surely address the customer service questions you all may have as well. Oh, he's here. He snuck in. Sorry. He's here. Yeah.
I thought it was the ghost.
Yeah. And in purple, and I guess I just didn't see him come in. All right. Sorry,
Okay.
so we're here to answer any questions you have.
Any questions for staff?
Bobby, yes, it's Councilman Holmes. Could you go back to the
Sure.
Design slide? Yeah. So these two separate entities would be needed to make this transition happen. So we're not talking about 55. We're talking about $130,000 plus dollars.
That's correct. So I wanted you to be able to see the direct cost, and then you'd be able to see the staff time. So that top part is staff time. I hope that we're all still employed here in the next 4 to 6 months. So you're going to pay that regardless. But that is time above and beyond what we've already, are putting towards other projects. And I will say there's no director time in there, right? We're here. We're going to, see whatever projects through. These are the managers and the analysts that have to do this above and beyond the many other things that they should be working on.
When we made the transition years ago to Bank of America from wherever we were, did we encounter these same type of situations and obstacles?
I'm sure we did. So I think we switched from Wachovia. There was a policy prior where the city was, and I don't know if we were unique at the time, but we were moving our deposits every few years, right? Mm-hmm. 2004 was the last time that happened. And I think since then our systems have surely gotten more complicated and more connected. So, and third-party IT costs have probably doubled in the 17 years too. So it's certainly gotten more expensive. There are more connections that have to be made. One thing I want to be clear is we're not saying we'll never switch banks because of this obstacle, right? If there was a problem with customer service, or if another bank had a better technology and I really felt like we've got to have this to serve the citizens, I would tell you, I think we've got to do something about that. We're not here to say this is never going to be a worthwhile project whatsoever. Just in this case, the other bank came very aggressively on price, which is one of the big factors that we're looking at here.
Can you, your evaluation criteria, I see Bank of America is 95 out of 100, or evaluation score is 74 out of 80. What is the calculations behind this? How do we arrive at this score?
Sure. So the RFP response is primarily checking boxes. Do they meet the minimum requirements? Are they registered at the LGC? Are they, help me out, Ashley, what are some of the other recommendations? But it's very much checking boxes, right? And then, do they have these other technologies that we're interested in? Are they able to do ACH and all that? So that is purely scoring their response, right? We haven't even talked to the bank at this point. The demonstration phase is when they get to come in and they get to show us all those things they talked about. And we actually get to ask questions, and they walk us through typical transactions. And our accountant that does the reconciliation gets to ask questions and things like that. So it's a lot more personal, and that's really where they have the opportunity to show what they can provide.
So you had an RFP response, and then you had a performance-based evaluation based on actual live scenario, operational-wise.
Correct, and that was still a sales pitch too, right? So they're obviously using data that they've got on a server somewhere, and they just want to demonstrate it for us. But that's their opportunity to talk directly to staff and sell them on the product, and also just demonstrate that they can do the basics of what they said they could do on paper.
Any talks with Pinnacle about any innovation they may have down the road that may change our mind about possibly working with them? Did we talk to them about some of the deficiencies that they had in their proposal or evaluation?
We did share with them where they were outshined in certain areas by Bank of America, and it was not anything they were surprised about, right? It was more on the technology side, the efficiency, especially of their payment consolidator, their online tools. Right now, there's things we can do through Bank of America's cash portal that we're told by Pinnacle we'd have to pick up the phone and call. And that's not necessarily a feature when you're working for efficiency and you want to be able to keep the day rolling, right? There were also certain time restrictions with Pinnacle, so we'd have to catch things earlier in the day. If a customer put an extra 0 in their payment, they would have less time to call us to get it reversed. So there were some certain things like that we were worried about would affect customer service. With all that said, we're going to look at them again in 5 years, I'm sure. I hope that they'll, provide a response in 5 years, just like any other bank that's listed.
Thank you.
So you are still recommending Bank of America?
That's correct. That is still staff's recommendation.
Did you speak with representatives since we put this in pending from both banks again?
Well, I guess, yes, we did reach out because Bank of America obviously wanted to know if it had been approved, and we shared some of the concerns. We told them we were coming back in a month, and I'm sure they listened to the YouTube audio to hear what the comments were. We also spoke with Mr. Randy Carta at Pinnacle Bank again. He shared some concerns about the cost side of things, wanted to make sure we weren't saying that Pinnacle was charging us $25,000 to $30,000 or that we were having to upgrade to some new technology in order to utilize them. So I do want to be clear on that the conversion costs are not unique to Pinnacle, and I shouldn't say that. Some of the details, right, are going to be unique to Pinnacle, but overwhelmingly the costs are going to be there when we convert to another bank.
So just looking at your RFP evaluation score, if you were to say we were going to look at First Citizens, those conversion costs would be much higher dealing with First Citizens than with Pinnacle.
It's impossible to know that without getting the 10 people together and looking at what outside.
Hypothetically, if you're looking at the RFP score.
All the RFP response says is who we think, based on paper, could do the job best. I would hate to say that First Citizens may have worse technology issues, or they may have better technology than even Bank of America. It's just impossible to have all 7 people come in for an evaluation and evaluate them that way. But I would say there's no reason to think it would be any more or less expensive right off the bat than the conversion that we've estimated.
That's all I have.
Any other questions for staff? Okay. Hearing none, I'll make a motion for approval of this item. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Wait, what's the motion?
The motion to approve.
Oh, I probably should have read. Staff is recommending, the Financial Services Department recommends the City Council select Bank of America for the city's primary banking services for the period January 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2026, and authorize the appropriate city officials to execute all necessary documents.
That's what it says.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a motion and a second for approval. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I would like to state that I think in any of these discussions we have as a council, we talk about a lot of long-term things. We talk about smart power and water meters that are going to be expensive, that it would take us 10, 20 years to recoup that investment. And I think something like this is forming a relationship with somebody who would do a service for the city, but be a partner in the city. I think that from the size of a company like Bank of America versus Pinnacle, I see more opportunities for and willingness for a company like Pinnacle to make concessions or adjustments to be able to accommodate anything that we need for them, more likely to occur than somebody the size of Bank of America. I had a conversation with Robert, who was here tonight from Pinnacle this afternoon, about some of those things. I think it would take some work and some time from staff and even some money in some ways to switch that relationship to Pinnacle. But I think, you know, several members of council have spoken about that. That company does a lot for High Point. And I would like to make a substitute motion that we move that contract to Pinnacle.
Second. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion on the substitute motion?
Yeah, to Councilman Jones' point, I think something has to be said about the fact that, at least for me, everywhere I go, all throughout the city, all parts of the city, all times of the city, who I see represented in various ways doing the work, the people, is Pinnacle. Mm-hmm. And I think that, I mean, your point around long-term investment in relationship and partnerships, I also just think that in terms of availability, I mean, if we're having conversations about availability, there's only one bank available here tonight. And granted, there could be good reasons why a big bank is too busy to come tonight, but I think that's a point to be made, right? We've got a bank who comes and shows up every day that I see them. I don't know. I mean, I think there's something to be said about that. So, thank you.
Any other discussion on the substitute motion? Okay. I'm going to call the roll on that. Then substitute motion is to, basically, we're going to switch to Pinnacle, and they would authorize city officials to execute all necessary documents. I assume that's your motion.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
No.
Councilman Johnson?
Aye.
Councilwoman Peters?
Aye.
Councilman Moore?
Aye.
Councilman Williams?
No.
Councilman Hudson?
No.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
And Councilman Jefferson?
Aye.
The mayor votes aye. That's approved by a vote of 6-3. Okay. Before we came in today, we were, just when you thought it was over, before we came in today, we were in a closed session, and we suspended that closed session so that we could go handle this item.
I'm not sure that you did the minutes.
Oh, that's right.
I believe you have some minutes to.
That's true, okay. After we approve the minutes, we're going to go back into closed session.
You're actually going to adjourn this, if you will.
Yeah.
And then you'll return to the closed session under the special.
Okay, that'll work. All right. So there are minutes to be approved. Are there any changes or suggestions for the minutes? Okay, then I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Is there a second? Second. A motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of approval of the minutes, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay. Anyone opposed? The minutes are approved. So we will need a motion to adjourn this meeting, which will take us back into the closed session from the special meeting at 3:30.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to adjourn this meeting. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion passes. So 5:30 meeting is adjourned, and we are back in the closed